my friend Bubba here has graciously accepted my invitation to do a little interview. And I don't know if you guys remember, but his brother Vid did one with me a few months back. And we've been trying to get together, and with everything going on, weather, quarantining, whatever, it hasn't been possible. But he is here today. Woohoo! So welcome, Bubba.
Thanks.
I just want to give a quick little background. I met Bubba about 10 years ago in a meeting up in Thomaston, and you came in to the room. Your brother introduced us, and you were so pissed off at the world. You did not want to be there. And we kind of were like a little, I don't know, like a little clique. We had our own little clique, and we started spending a lot of time together and going to a lot of meetings together, and I got to know you. And there was one thing that you used to do all the time in the meetings, and I didn't understand what you were doing, and you would sit there and you would draw on a cup. And I wasn't sure if you were paying attention or not, and I was like, what the hell is he doing? And one day, we were talking, and you were just talking, and I flipped my head around, and I was like, holy shit, Bubba, I would have hated to see you on cocaine. And your answer was, that was the only thing that would shut my mind down. And that's why I draw on the cups, because it helps me to concentrate. And I was like, oh. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So it just to say that you just don't know what other people go through. And I wanted to invite you here because, 10 years later, you're doing some amazing work with some people in recovery all the time. And so I would love for you to tell a little bit about how it was, what it was like, and what you're doing now.
I'm Bubba. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and my sobriety date is December 27th, 2010. I am a sponsor. I have a sponsor, and I have several home groups. And I'm supposed to start with that so that anybody that's listening understands it. It doesn't matter how much time you have, that those things should stay in play. It's funny that you brought that up because I don't do that anymore. And the reason is upon entering into sobriety, we have this squirrel's nest in our head that's just so much going on, and they call it restless, irritable, and discontent, and mine was particularly bad, and I'm not unique, everybody's is bad, but I couldn't, if I looked at somebody sharing, I couldn't get anything that they said. I couldn't obtain it, I couldn't retain it. Even if I heard it, it would just go right through, but if I was doing something that took up that primary function, I would absorb what you said and get it fully, and people thought I was crazy, which I probably was. And
aren't we all?
I remember a lot of very quick-paced thoughts circling through, and I also remember that when I came in, I didn't want to get sober, which is why I was pissed, and my brother dragged me in kicking and screaming, and even till now, I'm a bit of an adult child, but I really was then. There's a certain amount of delusional thinking that everyone has, but I literally wouldn't, I knew it was bad, obviously it was bad. Life is unmanageable when you're drinking yourself and drugging yourself to death, but accepting it and learning to do something different and identifying, getting a program, getting a sponsor is a big step, because when I came in, I knew I didn't know how to drink safely. I knew that that's what it was. I'd been drinking since I was 13 off and on, and I knew that it had been bad for years. Unmanageable, no job, unapproachable, not bathing regularly, but also my head, my thoughts were just all over the place, and meeting people that seemed happy without booze that claimed to be alcoholics seemed like BS. Right?
Yeah.
What are you guys smiling at? You can't drink ever again. You can't smile at me.
Right.
Jerks. But the first meeting I went to was in Plymouth with my brother. And I remember just thinking, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody other but my brother. And I'm thinking, these people are nuts. And I had an answer for everybody sitting around the room. But when my finger came back around, I wasn't actually pointing, but in my head, when he came back around to me, I really didn't have an answer for me. I'll start with this. I remember my first real drink. I was about 13. And we're taking sips off a big bottle of Seagram's VO, which at the time, you're 13, tastes like burnt crap. And it was very hot and spicy, but I remember all of my insecurity and all of my restless, irritable discontent slowly melted away. So as soon as you taste this thing that tastes bitter and awful and disgusting, you want another sip because it makes you feel just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit ease and comfort. And if I knew it did that, I probably would have started drinking earlier. And then we ended up doing crazy things after that. Fast forward to high school, trying to chase that first sip for the rest of my drinking career and putting an emphasis on where's the party. And if there isn't a party, we're going to make one. And I tell this all the time. I don't know how we did it, but we always got a keg. You had to be 21. We were 21, like 16, 17, 18. You had to get a tap, and someone had to sign for it, and they had to be 21. So how do we do that every weekend, all the time? They're like $60, which is like $160 now. And who do we get to sign these? We did it. Because we are resourceful drunks.
Yeah, we
so
are.
We're teenagers, and we're gonna be like, if there's not a party, we're going in the woods to make a party, and we're gonna do this as often as possible. And that the feeling of social awkwardness would melt away, and you could talk to girls, and you could fight dudes that were bigger than you, and you thought you were cooler than you were, and all those things came into play. And what do they say? Alcohol gives you wings, but then it takes away the sky. So you start drinking, it's fun, all this emotional security, and you feel great. Not the next morning, but while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Even then, even when it was fun and it was social fun, you still drink too much and throw up and go, oh, it's something I ate. It wasn't something you ate. It was the 16 cups of natural light that you
I
just
had bad
drank.
fish.
Yeah. Fast forward a little bit past that. I always say that normal people will adjust their lifestyle to suit their goals. So if you have an agenda and you have a goal, you'll learn to eat something different or live differently or budget your money differently or dress differently to suit that goal so that you can accomplish it. Drunks, we adjust our goal to suit our lifestyle because I'm like, that's really going to get in the way of my issues, my habits, and my drinking. So I went to college for almost a semester. And I was doing pretty good, actually. And even though my entrance exam would say I wasn't, because it asked me like 3 times if English was my primary language, which probably means I'm stupid, at least at that test. And I remember, I'm like, no, I'm going to be good at this. And I was doing really well for that first part of the semester. But then they're like, oh, we have finals coming up. I'm like, what's that mean? They're like, you're going to have to study and do this. I'm like, it's really going to get in the way of my drinking. So I quit and walked out. I didn't unregister or anything. And so then I realized I just need to get a job that will pay for my habits.
Yeah.
I need to support this
Yeah.
thing that I call life, and I did. And like most drunks, we have decent earning capacity. We're smart people as far as any other respect than drinking or drugging. Both. I always say both because drinking was first and drinking was last. But
Well, that's how I've I'm not a stupid person. I do really well, excel at anything that I've ever done. And so why is this thing beating me so badly? And so you start to make the excuses of, I'll just, I won't do that report. I'll do it later and later and later and later. And we find that our addictions get the better of us. We never had the control in the first place is what it comes down to. But who wants to admit that? No one.
it's funny you say that. We were talking about it last night. Your brain will because alcoholism lies to me in my head in my own voice.
Yeah.
So you also have that
Yes.
reward system where you're like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do a little bit of it and then I'm gonna have a drink, or I'm gonna do a little bit and then have a drink and wait and then do a little bit more and have a drink. But as soon as you pop, you can't stop. So my brain's gonna tell me it's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna do this. I'm just do that, and you don't do this or that. You just drink.
Yeah.
And then you put that on the back burner, and then when the deadline comes, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to do it, and I knew I wasn't. And it only took me an hour to actually do it, but I didn't sit down and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's alcoholism in a nutshell. I remember a lot of jobs. I've been hired and fired by multiple places. And if I could keep my attention focused and if I could do what I was supposed to, I could gain some sort of work ethic and excel at what I do. And I still do what I did for my primary job. I have 2 jobs. One of them is under the table. One of them is my primary job. And I do that. And that's most of my income and most of my time. And I've been doing it for 20 years off and on. But I was fired from the place I learned. And I went to another place and went out of business. But because I've rebuilt my character and I've rebuilt my reputation, I got hired on the spot, which would have never happened because we burn bridges.
Yeah, we do.
But you can rebuild bridges too. So I
like
always
that.
tell my sponsees, like, listen, some bridges are meant to burn, and sometimes you have to burn them to learn a lesson. but you can make new bridges and you can reforge bridges. So I didn't expect it to go the way it did, but I've been sober for over 10 years and doing what I'm supposed to for most of that time, and things heal, things come back together, things reform, and you get a lot of weird thoughts about how it used to be, but it's not that. And I always tell my sponsees that you're not a victim of your life, right? You're not suffering the damage of your life. You're not a victim of being alive, right? You have to learn to get better and thrive. But also, I am not the wreckage of my past. So the things that I've done don't necessarily define me. Doesn't make them okay, doesn't make them right. But if I work to mend them and I work to move forward, they don't own me. I'm not steered by fear. I don't become that. If all I do is stare at what I did and act out because I think that I'm going to do it again, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
But if you move away from it and move towards, and that's getting sober. Not just putting down a drink, not just staying away from drugs. Learning that my thinking is off and I need to mend that and I need to move in the direction of sobriety. Right? And when you just get sober and you don't go to meetings and you don't get a sponsor and you don't do step work, it's sobriety.
Sobriety.
You're just dry.
Oh, I never heard that before. Sobriety.
And the difference, the fundamental difference between an alcoholic and a non-alcoholic is they might be able to stop at some point and they might start up, but the difference between me is when you take away alcohol, I don't get better. Maybe for a time, but all those isms, all the character defects, and all of my behaviors will blossom, right? Road rage, unmanageable behaviors, like relationships with other people, relationships with humans, and we still have issues with that stuff sometimes anyway, but the idea of sobriety is to keep them at bay, to keep them at manageable levels. And when you get sober, right, the first thing you're thinking is, I just don't want to get drunk. My life is a mess. I don't want to live the way I live. It sucks. And I have this constant aching agony of life. It just hurts to be awake and alive. I need to get drunk because I need to quell that. I need it to go away. I want to be comfortable in my own skin. And then you realize that there's so much more to it. And as you accept, you move forward, you get away from that, and then you start to get sober, and you start to help other people. You start to regularly attend meetings, you start to make new relationships, and learn to thrive. I didn't get sober to be miserable, and I didn't get sober to sit at home and think about why I got sober. And
yeah.
So many people, and I'm not trying to judge, although we all have built-in noticers, especially if you're drunk. So many people come in and they just go to meetings, or they just take one commitment and they don't do all of it, but they don't get all of it.
Yeah.
You don't get all of the magic that is freely provided by doing step work and by doing these things, because that's the solution, right? I need to look at what's wrong.
Yeah.
I need to look at, normal people don't try to drink themselves to death.
Why not?
Right? Like, normal people know that that's bad, or if it's injurious to your health, they'll stop, or if they get married, they stop, or they have a new job, they can stop. Like, we don't stop for anything except that spiritual solution and a program of action. And I would have never known that, because you can't explain that to someone. They have to kind of endure it. They have to go through it, and they have to come out on the other side of it different. And I don't necessarily know how it works. I just know it works. And I know that there's a process. I know that process works. I don't know how exactly it works. I just know that it works. It awakens something in us that changes fundamentally our outlook on life and how we see things and how we respond to life. That's a spiritual experience. They call it a vital spiritual experience. Vital means like to give life or of life. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I had a pretty low bottom. I was on 120 milligrams of methadone when you met me. And I didn't stop when you met me. It took me about 6 months, which is why you've known me for a little over 10 years, because I didn't stop at first. But they told me I had cirrhosis. They said that you're probably going to die. You only have about 2 years, and they don't give new livers, and they don't even put you on the list if you're actively drinking.
Right.
So, long story short, normal people would stop. I pushed that envelope for like a year and a half, right? And not to be gross, but I'm throwing up bile every morning, saying, no, it's something I ate, even though I know it's not. And my guts are shutting down, and things are bad, and I have really high levels from my liver. And normal people would stop, but I was okay with it. I'm like, you know what? I can't stop, so I'll just drink myself to death. And I accepted that. And that was in and around the time you met me. And it's better now, by the way. So imagine if you're allergic to like a fruit or a vegetable, and they tell you you're allergic to this, don't eat it because something bad's gonna happen, right? But they tell you you're allergic to alcohol. Something bad happens every time you drink it. You can't stop. It might even go for days, but we still drink it. and we still continually drink it.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest thing we do is, even if it's been a couple days, right? Because you're so sick and you're so wounded from the last time, you can take a couple days, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and we still do it.
But what do? You still pick it up and you do it.
Still do it.
Every time we did it, we knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the position our life was in. We knew it was making our head a scrambled egg.
Yep.
And you still do it every time. And
because it's going to be different. We think it's going to be different.
It's all, I'm only going to do a little.
Yeah.
I'm only going to drink a little. I'm only going to get a little Coke. I'm only going to dabble in this.
Yeah. It just.
And the funny thing was,
insanity.
towards the end, I didn't even want to drink anymore, but I physically had to. And I was only drinking straight vodka. And I was on 120 milligrams of methadone. My guts were shutting down, and I couldn't not drink. So,
Wow.
I remember thinking every time I would go to get liquor, like, I don't even want to do this, but I have to. I was riding a children's bicycle. I'm 6'2", riding a children's bicycle to go get liquor during the day, and recycling cans if I had to, or my mom would give me money or whatever. However I had to get money, I would get money, and then I would get what I needed to get with that money and make sure I had enough left over for a pint or half pint or whatever. And I didn't like it. I was 31 years old, living in a basement, doing what I could to stay a little bit drunk, but I couldn't drink during the day. This is the last part of my debauchery. So I would hide it under my pillow and wait until everyone went to sleep. And I would go down, and my brother lived upstairs, and he'd hear it, and he would know it. So I'd wait until like 10 o'clock, and I would take one top, of the bottle, but you can't rip into it because they hear it. And all I wanted to do was rip into it and pound it, but I couldn't, so I would do one click at a time and then listen for him above to make sure he didn't hear it. One click. There's like 50 clicks. So I go, and wait. Right? So I'm doing this.
God. It's so crazy. I'm so
justifying that.
Yeah, but we can laugh about it, thank God.
Yeah. But that's the final part of my debauchery was the clicks on the Dubra cap, waiting for my brother to not hear it.
Oh my God.
There's like 50 of those. So when I finally was sober for about 6 months or more, I did a cleanup in my room of bottles, and I didn't know how bad it was until this happened. I mean, I knew how bad, but I didn't know how bad I was in that spot. And there was over a dozen that had a sip or a half left that I didn't know. I didn't finish. I just kept hiding them in places. And I didn't want to open them and pour them out in the sink, because if I smelled it in the process of opening it, I might have drank them. So I put them all in a bag and threw them out just to get them out of the house. And I knew that the garbage was coming soon, so I wouldn't go dumpster dive for them. And the things we do to stay drunk. But I had been sober, and I did that. And I remember, like, how many times did I do this? A lot of times.
Yeah.
So unmanageable. And unmanageability comes in a lot of forms. But when we talk about powerlessness and unmanageability, powerlessness is, I don't have the defenses to not pick up that first drink, right? And my allergic reaction is I can't stop once I start. And unmanageability is already there, but the alcohol just makes it worse. And it blossoms. And so I go to these meetings, I start to hear stuff, people are sharing, it's making sense, I want to make connections, because what do we all thrive for? Connections with other people.
Yeah.
Connections, and we don't really have that when we're drinking. The dude at the bar stool may still be sitting at the bar stool where he used to drink, even though I hadn't been to bar in a while because they didn't serve enough booze for me. But the connections we make when we get sober are different because it's real and we have a common bond. And the people that we used to know could give, a hoot less about who and how we are now, especially if we get sober and it threatens their staying drunk.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Good for you.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, that's really great. End of conversation.
Yeah.
Or what's the other one?
It's
Like,
okay.
you were black sheep before from your family, and now you're black sheep because you don't drink, but I'd much rather be not invited because I don't drink.
What I just saw the other day, I used to think I was the black sheep of the family, and then I went to AA and found the rest of the herd.
Yeah.
We find the rest of the herd. We do. We have this common bond, and we just are like, oh, it's comforting to know that there are people that actually think like us, drink like us, and have the same thoughts.
Act like us?
Yeah, that we thought that we were so different, and we're not.
That kills people when they come in, they call it terminal uniqueness.
Yeah.
Because you get stuck in your head.
Yeah.
I'm different. My problems are rare, and I'm special, so I can't stop. You don't know my problems. We're like, yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Pretty much 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have that problem, we've heard of it, we've seen it, and we've done it.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Yeah. And this is just such an easier, softer way. And if I heard one more person say that to me, I wanted to stab their eyeballs. And that's why I think that I stuck with you and Vid so much in the beginning because we were just beginning, and all these other people had, you know, multiple years, and they were just too freaking happy for me.
Yeah.
But I know why now.
Mhm.
You know, I know why now, and that's the awesome part of this.
I remember thinking my first sponsor was crazy. Jerry, whom you're friends with as well, because he used to say, "Thank you for letting me pick you up," and he would drive from Terryville to Oakville and back to Thomaston, and thank me for letting him give me a ride. I'm like, you must be crazy. What is wrong with you? And he would say that, but I didn't know what that meant until I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know,
Yeah.
because whenever we're doing something for someone else, we get out of ourselves.
Yeah.
We lose, you know, the sight of our own problems, and it puts them into perspective, and we feel better. That's how the program works. It says it like 64 times in the big book. Work with others. Intensive work with others.
Yeah.
Work with
Well,
another
I
person.
do know that in the beginning when I started to do that, though, I'm like, okay, let me do something for somebody else that'll make me feel better. And it did, but I got addicted to that, and I still wasn't working on my own stuff. You know, and I'm like, oh, God, okay. That's when I went back and actually did the steps because I was avoiding those like the plague. I did not want to admit to myself and anybody else of the, you know, my wrongdoings. But
Face it.
yeah, you know.
I also like when you're giving people really good, solid advice, but you're not doing it yourself. So the joke is, here, take my advice. I wasn't using it. You're like, do this and do that.
Yeah. But I do. And I understand that you still go to a ton of meetings and you have a bunch of sponsees and you're helping.
I try to go every day.
Do you still?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Why not?
Why not? I guess, yeah.
And I work
why
2
not?
jobs, and I have 2 kids, and I'm married, and I have a very busy life, but I wouldn't have that life if I didn't get sober. So why would I turn away from the thing that gives me what I have?
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love to hear
I had that discussion with my wife one day, and she wasn't complaining or anything. I just explained to her. I said, if you like me like this, because she's never seen me drunk. She doesn't know any of that.
Yeah.
I met her when I had 5 years. So she saw me with 5 years of sobriety, which is just about when you start getting your marbles back. And I said to her, if you like me like this, I got to do what I've been doing all along. If I start switching and moving stuff around and trying to spin different plates, I can't promise I'll be who I am now. I can't promise that I'll be a functioning adult, which, you know, it varies, but I'm still mostly a functioning adult.
It varies. It varies from time to time. Oh, God, my
Spirituality
goodness.
waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
So it's my program. It's ups and downs. It's everything, but it's less
life.
ups and downs.
Yeah, life happens. And we just have the tools now to be able to deal with it. And it's not devastating. You know, it's not devastating. You know, even, you know, going through, you know, deaths. You know, I remember when my dad passed away, you know, oh, my father died, you know, and that was the greatest excuse for me to drink, you know. I wasn't thinking about what my mom was going through or my siblings or my kids were going through. It was me. And I stayed drunk for a week straight. I don't even hardly remember it. And
Isn't that the point?
yeah, it is the point. It's to just numb everything. And you know, I have lost people since I've been sober, and it's hard. But we're supposed to feel those feelings and have gratitude and be grateful. And I'm able to think of other people and what they're also going through, and not just me.
And be present for them.
Be present for them. And that's what this is all about.
Well, you know what they say? Feelings were meant to be felt. And if you don't feel them and you don't process them, they don't go away. They fester.
They fester.
Yeah,
you know.
and it turns ugly.
Yeah, it does.
The whole idea of this thing is for us to be comfortable in our own skin. It's to build a life around us that we don't want to drink, right?
Right.
And if I have things, and life still happens, people pass away, it happens all the time, unfortunately. But if we have a foundation and we work to stay sober, and spirituality becomes an existing part of our life, a constant, when things happen, we just process it, we go through it, and we come out on the other side.
Yeah.
Getting drunk would literally just make the whole thing worse. It makes all of my spirit, you know, starting over would be a nightmare. And I don't even, it's funny because it's been so long now. I remember what it looks like and I remember what it felt like, but it was so long ago that it's a distant memory now. So if anybody's new and they're watching this, the scariest thing you can think of is all of that stuff right behind you. It's like a tsunami of everything you did, you know, over your head, but one little step away from it every day gets farther and farther, and all of a sudden is years and years. And then you just use that stuff to identify with a new person, right?
Yeah.
You use that as a method so that they understand that even though I may seem to be normal now and have things that my life looks functional, I was a wreck when I came in. And that's saying it lightly.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, Bubba, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I love you. I just, I have fond memories of us all, doing our thing together. And I'm so happy for you. I follow you on Facebook and see those beautiful kids of yours and your beautiful wife and your beautiful life. And who would have known, right?
No,
Who would have thought?
I would have set the bar much lower. Much lower.
Well, thank you, honey. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And stay tuned for upcoming things for next week.